Hey folks, in this video example we're going to talk about a relatively common practice in MetaLocator of creating multiple locators within the same account that present different data. The first thing we're going to do is take a look at the data that we have. It represents a typical sample data file. Scrolling off to the right, we are going to observe a few categories: retailers and distributors. In this example, we're going to create two locators, one that addresses our retailers and the other that addresses just our distributors. Notice there are a few that overlap in both. This is the relatively most common and simplest use case. I'm going to create one locator for my retailers. This is a brand new interface and it has the using the rich media template. And under filter and sort, I'm going to set show only categories to retailers. What that's going to do is effectively limit the data in the interface to only the retailer data. And so I can now save and close and go and make a new interface which then only contains my distributor data. And that's relatively straightforward. Basically repeating the same process. Instead, this time I'm going to filter and choose the distributors. And so there are some that overlap. Notice that, for example, the retailer tag is not output in the result, even though the sample location may be in both the retailer and distributor result. If you want to also limit the category dropdown, you can go to the search settings, expand category, and you can filter the category dropdown to show only, in this example, the retailers and distributors are both in a category group called location type. And so I can leverage that in the category group filter. So notice these are both in the location type category group. And so that will allow me to select just those values in the category dropdown. Now, if I wanted to, and so that would also allow me to, for example, only display service categories on my retail locator and exclude them on my distributor locator. And so that's the relatively, I think, most straightforward way of having two locators that show different data based on a category dropdown, or excuse me, a category field. The other way that you can do this, and sometimes it's simpler to do, is using a custom field. The example custom field here is favorite color. And one of the advantages to doing this is that you don't have to mess around with category settings and potentially overlapping categories, ones that you want to appear on one locator and ones that you don't want to appear on the other. You can leverage a custom field when you have no overlap. For example, we have retailers that are also distributors, but we would never find a yellow that is also a purple. So this is very effective when you have, for example, locations that do not have any overlap for a particular value, like a brand or a region or any sort of custom field that would not have multiple values in this list, meaning it's a one-to-one relationship, whereas categories, it's a one-to-many relationship. And so the process is basically the same. I'm going to make a yellow locator and a purple locator as indicated by these favorite color values. And the way that I can do that is under, I'm just going to rename this one yellow. And under filter and sort again, I'm going to release that category filter because it no longer applies to this example. I'm going to go down to field filter. I'm going to say where locations.favoriteColor equals yellow. That'll limit all the results in this to only where the value is yellow. Notice now, though, we get both categories that are output, and so there's no limitations on the categories in this example. We would follow the same procedure for purple, changing this other interface to instead display purple results, and then under filter, remove the distributors filter, and we can add a filter here for favorite color equals purple. In this next example, we're going to approach this from a slightly different angle that we see a lot in the support world, where we have a customer who has had a locator for a long time that is not filtered in any way, and they need to add a new brand without disrupting their existing locator. And so let's say, for example, we've been running Yellow Corp for a long time, and that would likely indicate that under filter and sort, it would actually look more like this, meaning we'd be displaying all of our data and that there would be no filter applied at all. And so let's say that we had a new data set come on that, say, for example, was purple, and our data set now includes a bunch more locations, and we don't have any way to distinguish between the locations that we had and the locations that we're adding. And so this data file would then represent an export that you had exported from your account. And one of the things that you might do as somebody who has an account like this is you might introduce a new field by going to Fields, and let's make a new one. And I'm just going to call this one Brand, right? Let's say that yellow was one brand, and we're bringing on a new brand called Purple. And so now I'm going to, now that I've got my data, I'm going to go to my, basically the end of my fields here, and I'm going to insert a new one called Brand. And I'm going to label my existing fields, my existing locations as yellow. And I think it was somewhere around here. This would be my other brand that was coming on board. Now I have a way to tell MetaLocator which is which, and I'm doing that by saying this is by leveraging this brand column. And so now I have a brand field, I have a brand column in my data. I'm going to go ahead and import this, and go ahead and import the data file. And so that will import the data, and we already have that column, so everything should match. So to do that in the account, you might want to take advantage of our bulk actions menu. Now there's a few ways to do this, and ultimately the goal is to assign all the locations that we already have in MetaLocator with a brand value equal to yellow. And what that will do is allow us to import another data set whose brand value might be equal to purple. And but we don't want to disrupt this existing data set. And let's say for example, you had 5,000 locations in MetaLocator. It's kind of hard to check all these boxes, right? One of the ways that you can select these is if you want to select all the records, you can just hit search. After you do that, you'll notice that this blue button appears called Create Selection. That will allow you to create a selection based on your search. It'll say 6 records selected because I only have 6 records selected, but if the results of my search, i.e. all locations in the database, if that was closer to 5,000, it would say 5,000 records selected, and it might say, only showing the first 20. But so now we have all the records in the account selected. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this option set field value that I love to use all the time, and click go. And I'm going to set the brand value. I'm picking that from the drop-down list. I'm going to set that equal to yellow. And this could go through and update 5,000 locations and set the brand value to yellow. Now we're just about ready to import our data with our new brand, but before we do that, I don't want this data showing up on my existing interface. And so a reminder, this is the interface that we've had running for a long time. It doesn't have any filters. And previously our data did not have any values in the brand column, and frankly the brand column didn't even exist. So now we can go into this interface, and under filter and sort, we can add a filter that says that the brand should be only equal to yellow. And that should not change our locator at all because all the data in the account right now has brand equal to yellow. And the cool thing about this is now as we add data to the account, where brand might equal something else, it's not going to interfere with our existing locator. And so let's go back to our purple data set. So this might represent our new brand. And let's import that data set. And in this case, we are going to just add the data. And now we can see we've got that data in here. So you can see sample locations 1 through, I think 10 or 12. And so now we can go to this site and go to interfaces, make a new interface, and we'll call this one purple. And under filter and sort, we can add our filter that will exclude yellow by essentially limiting locations.brand to purple. Excellent. So that was an example of where we've got an existing locator, and that's a relatively common thing where somebody has a locator and now they need to introduce another locator. And so sometimes they might have two locators and the process follows the same, meaning if you have multiple interfaces, you need to figure out how to exclude this new data that you're adding. And the typical way to do that is to filter your locators based on a value of your existing data. That can be in a custom field and it can be in categories. Honestly, I like using custom fields because typically it's a one-to-one relationship between the custom field value and the row for things like brand. And it's also a little bit easier because it doesn't involve the creating special like utility categories between that are only used for excluding data. So that's hopefully a good example of how to create multiple interfaces that serve multiple audiences with differing data. Thanks for listening.